So this last piece, that one from yesterday, so I had to stop because I had another shear I didn't realize. We've been discussing some different ideas, trying to get back into the thought. The first divine tool in order for the Jewish people to fulfill their commitment to God is to learn the Torah. Then he brought another one. He said the second divine tool is suffering. Let me get this focused a little bit better. And we know about that. Now the point here is called the spiritual crucible. Abraham's descendants would have to be refined not only in spiritual aspiration, but in the fires of persecution. We reached for the ultimate light. The sublime and admittedly difficult to grasp ideas of the Jews needed to become spiritually refined by breaking down and extracting some other physicality, as metal is refined in a smelting furnace. Just as the smelter uses heat to drive off impure elements and leave the pure metal behind, God refines the Jewish people continuously through a historical process that removes physicality and allows the attainment of holiness. I remember reading someone, and I think it was in Rebbe Nachman, that he said that there have been many, many butchers of Jews. But very often a funny thing happens is that the next generation of the butcher himself, like say, Stalin, or let's say Khrushchev, or any of these Russians, these horrible people, many times their descendants become Jewish. He says, why? Because all of that death releases the souls of the Jews, and the people that are around them are affected by it. But they keep butchering anyway. But you, God, took and brought us out of Egypt, that iron blast melting furnace, to be God's very own people, as is now the case. Interestingly, I was once told this lesson by an older friend of mine who survived the Holocaust. In an intimate conversation we had a few years before he passed in 2010, he explained that the core lesson learned from his 4 years of suffering in Auschwitz, and I have relatives now that went through this. The Nazis not only enslaved and killed the Jews, they degraded them in every possible manner, to the point that he knew in his dry bones that he was not a body, that his soul was above, and so he would never be truly enslaved. That knowledge he revealed to me, gave him the power to survive. That the knowledge that he revealed. So he quotes here now the Rebbe of Slonim. This is the explanation of all the exiles that the Jewish people passed through. That their purpose was to refine and purify the Jews. This was so they would be prepared to fulfill their exalted role in history, to create a spiritual abode for God's presence in our material world. And this was the primary goal of the Egyptian exile, to purify them not from sin, but to purify their souls so they will be capable of receiving the Torah. In addition to the purifying power of suffering, hatred of Jews has a second function. Another way suffering is a tool for the Jewish mission. As we have seen, anti-Semitism is often a reaction to the Jewish mission, to Jewish success, and to the ways that we change the world. When the Jews fulfill their role, they help spread awareness of God throughout the world. That awareness includes the understanding that life is a gift from God that has purpose and meaning, which is lovely, but also carries serious duties and obligations due to a higher moral code. When Jews spread God's message of ethical monotheism, moral responsibility, and human dignity, they are often resented. But what happens when they don't? When the Jews fail to live up to the national challenge that our forefathers accepted at Sinai? Jewish hatred emerges to ensure that the Jewish people cannot disappear or fade away. Nobody wants to be married to a Jew. Well, right now they do. With the fate of humanity hanging on the Jewish mission, failure is not an option. God created the world for a purpose. And he will see it through, allowing humanity to exercise its free will. When anti-Semites choose to hate and persecute Jews, they are using their free will. Simultaneously, anti-Semitism, it acts as a divine tool strengthening the Jewish people and keeping them focused on their mission. God has made anti-Semitism the final defense of Jewish exceptionalism and uniqueness. Hear that again? The forces that hate us make us better. When Jews try to abandon that exceptionalism, we want to be like everybody else. And this is a big problem that the state of Israel has. And I'm not sure that as a state, I mean, it's a working democracy, but where is the spirit in the state? The state wants to be like France. Well, we just found out that the French don't want us. And we're going to find out about that except the Germans, who were so deeply touched by the unbelievable murder of so many people by them. Forces them back. Throughout history, surges of Jewish assimilation were met with swells of anti-Semitism. We have seen that play out in the last 2 centuries, and we can see it all around us, and it's coming, and it is here. Let me get this focused up a little bit better. There we go. Most German Jews in the late 1800s and near early 1900s believed that assimilation would end the dislike of the other. That's what we thought. If we had a nation of our own, let's say like where we are now. Some, like Moses Hess, writing in Rome and Jerusalem 17 years before the term anti-Semitism was invented, knew that it wouldn't work out. Even baptism itself does not save one from the nightmare of Jewish hatred, of Jew hatred. That was the idea. Become a Gentile, become as Gentile as possible, become more and more accepted by Gentiles. This is the ideal now because reform began in Germany. So everything has to change. Well, everything has changed, actually. Orthodoxy, what we call Jewish Orthodox, has changed a lot. It's much more modern. But by the same token, it's also closed to people who can't read Hebrew. It's a problem. The knowledge of how anti-Semitism is a divine tool explains how a rabbi in 1920 could predict the coming of a German anti-Semite eruption more than a decade before it arrived. Rabbi Meir Simcha Cohen of Dvinsk, writing in his famous book, The Meshech Chochmah, well before the Nazis had any influence at all, warned that the German Jews who had tried so hard to assimilate into their host culture would instead be reminded painfully by the Germans that they are Jews. And here we are today. Here we are today, and the Jews are in the United States. We're free. We're able to do what we want. But nonetheless, hatred of us continues. And it's growing. Spurred on by the Muslims. They have their bone to pick. But also picked up by the leftists. And in the right-wing corner, we have lots and lots of them. The Jew forgets his root and sees himself as on that page, natural citizen of Germany or the United States is exactly what's happening today. And if you're idealistic, you want to be a Democrat. He forsakes the study of his own religion. He thinks that Berlin is Jerusalem, learning from the corrupt among his neighbors, not even from the upright amongst them. So I predict that a tempestuous wind and storm will blow from Berlin, uprooting him from those people there. He will know that he is a stranger. He will know that his roots are those of the people of Israel. Through this divine historical process, the Jewish people will always remain and grow stronger. This is the way of the Jewish people from the day they began their wanderings. Rabbi Simcha was not a prophet, but he did know the Torah. And so he knew the script, he knew God's tools, and he had read the prophet Yechezkel. And what you have in mind shall never come to pass. When you say we will be like the other nations. Now Israel is struggling through this right now. The state of Israel has an identity, but it is not clear. It's a wartime identity. What is in the middle, the inside of the Jews who live in Israel? We will be like the nations, like the families of the lands. As I live, declares the Lord of God, I will reign over you with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm and with overflowing fury. The Jewish people cannot escape anti-Semitism by trying to be like everybody else. That's the easy way. What's wrong with a ham sandwich anyway? Jew hatred singles them out, even they want to blend in. When you go to order the ham sandwich, maybe the lady says to you, maybe some other lady, "Gee, I didn't know you ate pork." God works through history, and Jew hatred is a painfully effective tool. As the Talmud relates, greater was the effect of the king, that is Achashverosh, removing his signet ring, which gave the power to Haman to decree genocide on the Jews, than the effect of the 48 prophets and the 7 prophetesses who had prophesied to Israel to improve their ways. Weren't we at a big, bawdy party, drinking for days, a little bit of debauchery here and there? We were there. Because the people rebuked from the prophets did not get the Jewish people to repent. The rebuke where they told us, they're telling us now. They're telling us how difficult the situation is becoming because we haven't come back, but we don't. Maybe some of us do. Whereas the removal of the signet ring succeeded in helping them repent for the good. In other words, the signet meant that they were going to massacre us. There was going to be an Auschwitz in Persia. Anti-Semitism serves as a reminder of their Jewish identity and ensures that the Jews survive. Rabbi Kook explained this idea in a public speech in Jerusalem's Old City in 1933. The same year Hitler came to power. Speaking of the pulpit on Rosh Hashanah, the day which is when we blow the shofar, it's a ram's horn, to help wake up spiritually, to improve their ways, he suddenly broke down, sobbing. After a few moments of stunned silence, he composed himself, quoted from the prophet Isaiah, and explained that when the Jews are not fulfilling their roles in history, as they should, a different type of shofar will blow to wake them up. Now, one of the features of Reform temple service is sometimes they have a trumpet, sometimes they have a shofar with a trumpet, a mouthpiece. Sometimes now they got better, they're doing a real shofar. They do that. There's no context for it. It doesn't make sense. Everything is in English. It has no depth to it. He explained that there are levels of shofar, but there are levels of shofar. And the one he feared was coming won't be blown in prayer. That's the problem. It won't be blown in prayer services, but rather will be the most painful, the shofar of affliction, when the anti-Semites are called to blow it to wake the Jews. Whoever failed to hear the calls of the first 2 shofars will be forced to listen to the calls of this last shofar. And this is what I worry about, what we pray for. Now, one of the things that draws me to Kabbalah is the concept in Kabbalah is not a revenge type call. That's really what idolatry does. It's not a revenge type prayer. It's a prayer of sweetening. We know that the world is full of anti-Semites, and we know that the world is full of pain. What we look for is meaning, the meaning of why, of how to approach God through that pain. All of that very hard to do. But it's the ultimate experience in this life. So he says the experience of being disliked often confronts even the most assimilated with the enigma that is anti-Semitism. Where is this coming from? This is the shofar blow. The blow that shocked me on that fateful day in high school, as I wondered, why are they picking on me? Now, this person, I heard him interviewed. He's from Canada, from a small town in Canada. His parents owned some kind of store. They lived up above it. And he was a part of the Canadian scene. He was assimilated. Now, you have to think he's up in the snow country there, so it's like snow on the ground 10 months a year. I had thought we were all the same, but they let me know that I was not them. I was a Jew. Anne Frank heard the shofar in 1944. Who had made us Jews different from all other people? Who has allowed us to suffer so terribly until now? It is God who has made us as we are. But it will be God too who will raise us up again. We can never become just Netherlanders or just English or representatives of any other country for that matter. We will always be, and I say singled out, remain Jews, but we want us too. But we want to, too. Down deep, the Jew wants to be a Jew, but he's convinced by the schooling that he's had, or the lack of schooling, that the way that he's going in the reform way is going to be good. But here we see. And this was the shofar that Hamas blew for Israelis and Jews to the world on October 7th, 2023. And so many Jews, Jew haters around the world mobilized right after that in support of genocidal terrorists. I have heard dozens of stories of how Jews in schools and organizations around the world have come together, often for the first time in solidarity and brotherhood since Jew hatred exploded. From Google to the Writers Guild and from the YPO leadership Council community to college campuses, Israeli and diaspora Jews have been forced to ask why. This book is meant to answer the question, and with a deepened sense of purpose, helps strengthen our neighborhood, our brotherhood. Anti-Semitism is both a blessing and a curse. It can be a response to both Jewish success and Jewish failure. It's a sign that our message is changing the world, and also that we cannot step away from it. So now it comes to this. And this is, I guess, maybe a watershed in this book, because it's going to go into a different section. We'll see. Summarizing the Jewish why and how. Now, I ask you, I guess the best way to say this is to read along with me, if you'd like to. I'm not the world's greatest reader, but I'm really looking for meaning. This has been a brief overview of how the Jews see the world. Approximately 3,800 years ago, Abraham searched. What he found changed the world. Abraham chose to become immoral and holy, to bring light in the human heart, and to play a special role in sanctifying God's name in the world. From Abraham's family, God established a people whose purpose was to bring blessing to all humanity. That blessing was the knowledge of the beauty, an opportunity of a spiritual life, a moral life, even as we live in a physical world. The Jewish people established a vision for humanity, that history has meaning, that our lives and our world have a purpose to live with love, mutual respect, human rights, with a goal for all of humanity to unite in spirituality, brotherhood, and peace. The Jews were given some divine assistance to help them accomplish their mission. We were given the Torah, a divine guide for living. We were given the mitzvahs, also known as commandments. They are powerful spiritual connecting forces, that things what we do between man and God and also man to man. The land of Israel, the ideal environment for the Jewish people to fulfill their mission and help the world while plugged into their spiritual source. And when all of that is still not quite enough, they are strengthened, purified, and protected by exile and anti-Semitism. With this awareness of how Jews define their mission, let's circle back and see an astonishing picture. Now let's go back, he says, let's go back to Hitler and Jew hatred. Since man is made of both body and soul and is free will, has free will, the fault lines of every human life and all human history is the choices around that struggle. Will man lean into his humanitarian, higher spiritual side? Or will he tilt to his baser animal side? Hitler somehow understood that most of us made the wrong choices. Read it again. Hitler somehow understood that most of this made the wrong choices and was terrified because his ideology was losing the battle for hearts and minds amongst the Jewish vision. The Jewish vision was too powerful. He grasped the nature of the Jewish people and set himself against them as their implacable foe. This is what he meant when he said he was a rational anti-Semite, and why, after centuries of persecution, had only resulted in continuous Jewish existence and increasing impact, he decided the world needed a final solution to the Jewish problem. They're in the way. God told Abraham that he was his messenger, and to be ready for millennia of resistance to his message. The resistance is Jew hatred. It's anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, Jewphobia, whatever name you want to call it. The anti-Semitic Nazi worldview was a mirror image of the Jewish worldview. In other words, the exact opposite. This is remarkable and is very relevant. So he finishes and he says like this, the path to empowerment. Understanding the deep roots of Jewish resilience and the relentless opposition they have faced is not a historical exercise. It's a vital foundation for moving forward. Recognizing the philosophical and spiritual underpinnings of the Jewish mission illuminates the path to personal and collective empowerment. As we transition, now we're going to another part here, part 2, we will take these insights and apply them to foster a stronger sense of identity and moral clarity, ensuring that the lessons of history guide our actions and inspire our future.